but learning that Christ really loved people, it changed everything. And that righteousness by faith was not something you develop. It's something that Christ lived in his life. And through his life, now he wants to give you. It's all a gift. And so just in a nutshell, I went back to that church. I'll never forget going back to that church. And we had a lot of baptisms, a lot of great times. And Pastor Hood was the pastor at the time. And he was very collegiate, cordial, and said, look, we have our former pastor, come and say some words. He didn't tell me he was going to. He was just, that's what we do if it's, you know, you've been there. And I remember getting up and looking at all the people, and I just dropped my head and I said, you know, I want to apologize because I didn't know Christ and thought I did. And Christ is merciful. And man, I just started laughing, thinking of things we did as a church that when I looked, I left people afraid. I didn't treat people with the patience that I could have. And not to mention, you can't find the 30-year-old. I mean, when you get our age, you're a different person anyway. And if you're not, something's wrong. But I apologize because I felt like, wow, we missed the point. I did the best I knew. I preached the doctrine so hard. But when the doctrines, this is what I tell ministers that when they ask me questions about how do you preach the doctrines. If someone leaves your meeting and someone asks them, what did you preach about? If they say the state of the dead, you missed the mark. If they say Jesus, okay, but what about Jesus? Oh, he showed how Jesus, through death, and this is what happens. He should really be the focal point, not a part of it, not an infomercial.
Well, if you had an opportunity, and by the way, you do, okay, to look directly into the camera and say to individuals that you have pastored on your journey, what would you say to them at this moment?
You know, I would say this. Number one, I love you, and I mean that with all my heart. And everywhere I've pastored or I've even extended, run any crusade, everywhere I've left a part of my life. Preachers leave a part of their life, their children's lives, sacrifices that only eternity would know. And if I hurt you, it wasn't intentional. But if I tried to help you, it was. And I just pray that you would never allow me or any other preacher or anybody to become more important to you than your eternal salvation. What I mean by that is God, through Christ, set an example for all of us in every area. And then he says, I want you to set one example for me. I want you to forgive others as I have forgiven you, or I cannot forgive you. So I'm going to watch how you forgive. I'm going to watch how you forgive, and then I'm going to forgive. And God doesn't mince on words when he says, if you do not forgive, I cannot. And so I have an incentive. That's an incentive to forgive. And I mean really forgive. Not talk about the person behind your back, not bring it back up, not be upset because they're prospering in life, but to really forgive. And it will break my heart to be looking through the books in heaven and see that someone didn't forgive me or another pastor or someone, and because of that, they disqualified themselves for forgiveness. And above all, please forgive yourself. Too many of us carry too much. I don't feel burdened of anything I've ever done. I believe in forgiveness. I believe there's freedom with it. Please forgive yourself as well.